Recording. Cool. Helen, if you wouldn't mind giving us a bit of an overview around what's your idea and what you'd want to look through.
Yeah, so on 19th of June, you're probably all aware that the Dispatches programme aired on Channel 4 about the Crawford's Walk care home. And so for the wrap up of last month, we wanted to have a look at whether we could find any analytics that indicated that there'd been any effect yet or any impact from that TV program. And so it's partly kind of looking how would you approach that and what kind of things would you look at, because I looked at kind of all the obvious stuff like visits and leads and things like that. Just be quite interested to run through, see if you had any different ideas.
Awesome. Yeah. Like I said, me and Helen discussed this earlier on. Like, really, really good show. Yeah, just kind of a heads up to anyone else if you get anything like this in the future and you want to bring it in. Really good show to discuss. So yeah, I think it's like while I present my desktop. Yeah, I think what we'll start off doing is just kind of, like Helen mentioned, just kind of dig into the top line stuff, because with things like this, generally speaking, you can probably do like 80% of the work in 20% of the time if you just focus in on the top line impact of what's happened. So if we would start off just by looking at visits from the 19th of June, but as she mentioned, this is relating specifically to Dispatch's program going live. So within that, what it might be worthwhile doing is digging into it by hour, just so that way we can see if there's any kind of explicit spike that happened. And then just to be really, really safe, we're going to compare that to week on week. So from the 19th, that would be the 12th. Well, what we're going to start off by doing is just trying to identify on the 12th of June versus the 19th of June, how do visits compare by hour. Cool. Is everyone happy with that? And
Yep, sounds good.
Yeah.
cool. This isn't some like Blue Peter, here's one that I made earlier kind of thing. This is just something that I was looking at previously. Cool, just 1 second while this loads. Cool, the first thing I'm going to do is just create some day ranges, so the ones I'm going to be looking at. So first off, obviously we're going to be looking at the 12th. Cool, and we're just going to call this 12th to 6th. Confuse yourself later on. Cool. And then the next one we're going to call 19th of June. Cool. So if we look under time, we should see that these ones are at the top. Let me just double check that these are correct. So we can see 12th to 6th corresponds to the 12th of June. 19th to 6th corresponds to the 19th of June. Sweet. So if I drop that one in there, and then the 12th one next to it, and obviously we're looking into the visits metric. And then lastly, just breaking this down by hour. Cool, so at the minute what we could do potentially is just pull this out. All I've done there is just selected the bottom cell, held down shift, and selected the top left cell to put it on, press Ctrl C, paste it in, and just say the 6. Oh. And then just use a visualization within that, or alternatively do 1 divided by the other minus 1 to give us percentage variance. Just 1 second. Cool. Then if we change the data type of that to percentages and do use conditional formatting, can see here that around 6 o'clock we saw a massive surge in visits. One thing that you notice there is the way that Adobe outputs time. So the way that's really easy to fix it, if you just do Control H, find what, replace T with space, and there you go, datetime format. We can then see that overall there looks like there's a massive spike nowhere, apparently, throughout the day. So if you just trend that,
Are these visits just to the overall website, or is it specific to the care home section?
so at the minute I've just done it to the overall.
Okay.
So what we can do is we can then start to dig into it and understand where that's come from. So if there is something specifically around care homes. So I'm doing that, it's just replacing those out with the hours specifically. So you can see there wasn't actually all that much in the way of variance between the two, except for a drop in traffic there, but we'd usually expect it. But a big spike at issues around 8 PM. Do we know when the show was aired?
I think Helen's just going to check, she said. But 8 o'clock might sound about right.
I feel like a magician when you get things like that, right? Is this your card?
Yeah, 8 o'clock. Looks like.
Cool. So the next thing that we can do, we've now identified when that was essentially happening. So all I'm going to do is just filter down just to these visits. So obviously we've got a control metric as being the previous week, and we've got the new on that. So I suppose one of the other things we could try and figure out is, did we pay for this traffic? So if we were to drop in Master's channel, we can start to look into what was the proportion of who came through what. So in terms of an insight that we could take forward with this, once this data actually retrieves, there we go. So we can see that the actual proportion of PPC higher than it was the previous week. So maybe as a response to things like this, we could potentially turn off PPC advertising around those kind of areas potentially. Again, not saying it's the right thing to do, but there's a potential kind of takeaway. So if we look at overall, we can see that as a percentage of total, increased week on week. So we've seen a larger population of users coming through via paid search, and gut feel is probably none of them are exactly customers. So yeah, that's potentially one takeaway we could take from that. The next thing we could do is start to look at where in the site that they came from. So again, nice and simple, just way of doing that is just literally, now that we know that this was the hour that it happened, week on week, so we've got the control variable there, just looking at entry URL and dropping that in again. So we can see that the vast majority of them enter on home pages, as you imagine, because they're just going to be searching for Booper. So you know, that's one thing that's actually quite surprising, in the fact that we can see that there was a massive drop in people entering on the Care Services page. What we'd expect to see off the back of that. So yeah, that's quite cool. That's an interesting little tidbit to take away from that. Cool. I suppose the only other thing that we could potentially look into is different metrics around this. So bearing that in mind, we could look at total phone calls that have come in. And we don't necessarily need to split that down by entry URL. Just 1 second. Always great when Adobe crashes. It's my own fault for working off Wi-Fi. Cool. Has anyone got anything else within that they kind of expect to see or want to dig into? suppose one of the other things that we might potentially see an impact on are things like contact us and other kind of like forms filling, things like that. So just to reiterate, I would get back down to looking at number of phone call impacts. So interestingly, it looks like the only kind of spike around phone calls was at this hour. However, at 8 p.m. there doesn't appear to be all that much. Do we know if it's in live around that kind of time?
I don't know. Do you think that could be press inquiries or things
That's
like
what
that
I'm
ahead of it?
thinking.
If there was a
Yeah.
press release in advance or
Yeah.
something like that.
What we can do.
Is that on
So
the 12th
yeah, so 12th at 3 p.m.
versus, yep.
So what I'm going to do is just literally display only selected rows just on 3 p.m. So response tab passed over the conversion page. So that essentially relates to where has this call come from on site. There are a few limitations to using this in terms of, so first off, it doesn't correspond to when the call came in. It corresponds to when the call is terminated, and response tab sends that information over to Adobe. It's just down to unfortunately, there's no way of actually improving that kind of latency between the two. So there we can see that the vast bulk of those additional calls in look like they have come from contact us, and yeah, contact us. Cool, so they look to be quite general inquiries. So yeah, that might have been more press related inquiries and things like that. Cool. As a follow-up to that, I suppose the way that I kind of chase that up is speaking with anyone within the contact center themselves, just trying to understand, did they see any kind of like calls come in around that time period that related to that? See if they got any kind of like wrap code system or something like that we could potentially hook into.
Would it be worth looking at the next day? Because I'm just thinking if the program was on at 8 o'clock, I don't know what time the contact centre closes, but potentially they might have had calls the next day.
Yeah, great show. Cool. So again, all we need to do there is just bring in another one. You'll notice that I'm using like pretty standardised naming convention there. It's just date and then what it relates to. It's good practice so much that you can just go back and find stuff whenever you're looking for it. Cool, so let's give it a second. Cool.
Are you there, Chris?
I'm indeed.
We lost you a minute.
Sorry again, it's my own fault for using Wi-Fi. Cool. So again, if we were to take that out and just drop in our there. So overall, the call volumes don't look like they change too much day to day. But if we create another time segment and just that way we can compare it like for like. So we'd want the week before 20th. So 6th. Cool. And then just drag it in again. Cool. So again, we just do the same kind of exercises, just looking hour by hour versus week on week. So we're using the previous week as a control variable. And again, within that, we're not really seeing any kind of major spikes around phone calls in for the day after. Particularly broken down by hour. Cool. Has anyone got anything following up to that? Has anyone thought of anything else they want to dig into around that kind of query?
Could we look at the page, the care home page itself, and see what was happening on the Crawford's Walk page, maybe?
Yeah, sweet, okay. So, all we need to do that if we just drag in visit again. Oh, sorry, just 1 sec.
Can we look at care homes overall and then that page as well?
Sweet, cool. So, as mentioned in the previous session, I've now pushed these segments live for everyone to use. So if I just search for RT Care Services calls, so hopefully everyone should have access to this segment themselves. So that essentially just relates to where the URL meets /care services, and it's just an agreed metric that we sent out a little while ago. Just means that everyone's using the same kind of segments to identify the same traffic. So looking week on week, overall there doesn't look to be anything major that's changed there. And if we break that down by URL, so URL path, sorry. So there looks to be a large drop off within the main home page. And what did we say the actual home, the care home page was called, sorry?
Crawford's Walk, I think it is a Crawford.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. So we can see a huge jump there. Cool, so that must be making up for the, we presume that there would have been actual drop within care home visits that week because of that additional traffic. So over 400 visits. That looks like it's brought it upwards a bit. Cool, and then just be completely certain that it's related to that, or we can see when the main impact of that was driven just by digging into that again by hour. Yeah, so there you go. Driven by that show that started at 8 PM.
Can we look at if they were coming through? I assume that would be natural search, wouldn't it?
Yeah, my gut feel is probably using organic, but yeah, great shout. Let's have a look.
In case there's any kind of right.
Yeah. So we've only paid for one actually coming directly through to that. However, the vast bulk of it looks like it's either come direct or via organic. Or referring domains potentially might be like linked news articles and things like that. So we could link it.
Yeah, we switched PPC off during the show, so that's
sweet,
fine.
okay. So yeah, so it looks like fast bulk of it coming from carehome.co.uk. So maybe not coming from news sources and things like that. So I imagine that'll probably be people searching through natural search for that care home and then linking directly through onto the Bupa homepage for that shop, that care home. Cool. Other than that, is there anything else that we think potentially could be impacted by that show? Like I said, I think as far as I can think of, the only other extra bit that might be potentially related to is forms. So if we look at forms completed any form, again, doesn't look like to be any major ones kicking out from that. Cool. So yeah, is there anything else further that anyone would like to see within that?
Not me, that's good. That covers everything.
So
for me.
There was a different program that we had on. Oh, do you remember the date of it, Johnny? It was a couple of weeks ago, I think. And I did a bit of work looking at the hour split and looking at the spikes, but I guess we haven't done the full analysis as you've done for this. Let me
let's say, would you mind sharing your screen and taking us through what you've done so far, and then
just
hopefully we
give
can all
me
work through it together?
2 minutes. Let me see if I can find my emails.
Yeah, no worries. Just while you're searching through for that, do you want to kind of give us a bit of a background around the program itself and what was it relating to?
Well, so I think Johnny had actually mentioned the day before that there was some program happening, but the next day I do daily reporting looking at BBY, so how many leads and sales and the conversion rate, and there was a massive spike in leads and we weren't really sure why it had happened. And then we talked about that the program was on, so I looked at the leads and sales in terms of an hour split, and then there was an absolutely huge spike at 9 o'clock, which was when the show was on, so it helped us to kind of work out that it was due to that. That's kind of a main overview. Let me just... Do you remember the date of it? What was it? 27th?
be a significant chunk at the end of the way to see feedback. But there's another piece which I'll let Carol explain in terms of the way our site transport. But for everything that's been created, what goes to material on Twitter feed,
Oh, right, I would have sent it on the 28th, wouldn't I? That's why I can't find it.
Sorry? Looking explicitly for that date. On the ball. Oh, stop sharing my screen, so you can take over whenever you're ready.
Okay, I've got the email, so I can run through that if that's okay.
Yeah, great stuff.
Right. Just let me know when you can see my screen. People seeing?
There you go, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so this was the daily update that I sent out. So leads were significantly higher. Like at the minute, I think they're about 400 usually a day. So it was a significant spike of 1,000. So what I did was looking at the leads from yesterday and then looking at that. Just split by hour to see if there's a particular spike that it happened, and as you can see at 9 o'clock it's pretty obvious that was where the main amount of traffic was coming from. So we could link that back to the TV show happening. I did also look at the split for sales as well. So even though there wasn't a specific jump in sales, we did get extra sales after 9 o'clock than we would usually previously. So again, that show probably did make a few people purchase, but not. Conversion rate did suffer quite a lot. So that was just initial. That helped us to kind of understand where the spike had come from. But I guess there wasn't a lot more diving into it than that.
Yeah, it's cool. Makes sense. I mean, answer the question in terms of what has that done for sales. So I suppose, given what we just ran through, how would you kind of approach digging into that further?
Well, I guess I probably wouldn't need to look at. I guess because it's such a clear trend, I probably wouldn't need to look at it week on week, but potentially could look at phone calls because I didn't look at that. Look at contact us forms as well, and particularly could look at different web pages that people went to.
Yeah.
And if there's specific, so I know this is a spike on the quote and buy journey, but whether there was spikes just to the health insurance section of the site as well.
Yeah. That's cool. Was there any, like, what was the actual content around the show itself?
It was around, it was to do with the NHS, and then it was talking about how private health insurance actually helped the NHS out. So it relieves stress because there was another pot of call for people to get health attention. Yeah. So it actually gave positive light for private healthcare, which was quite good.
Cool. So that's one of the other things that, did you look into any like other kind of like areas around the site? So did you look into the impact on like health assessments, for example? Someone may have been planning to have an operations via the NHS and then decide to rebook through.
Nope, that's a good shout. And maybe BOD as well.
Yeah, just anything around potentially those kind of ad hoc areas.
I hadn't, but that's a good shout.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Shall we have a look?
Let's do it. Do you want to lead the way?
Now you put me on the spot. I'm gonna try. Right.
Cool.
So what date was it? 27th.
27th, I think.
So new. Chris, has your mic been really funny? You keep sounding like a robot to us.
That's just me in general. No, I don't think so. Yeah, if it's not sounding fantastic, I'll have to bring my other headset for next week.
Don't
know.
Are you there?
Yeah, can you not hear me coming through? Sorry, again, it's because I'm on Wi-Fi. And 1 second. I'm gonna switch
It's
over
entertaining us anyway.
You sound really drunk.
Well, that's also true, but you know. Cool. I'm just 1 second
Okay.
changing my connection over to an actual wired one, so hopefully I sound less drunk. Hey everyone, sorry about that. Is the connection any better?
Yes, that's loads better.
No worries.
Do you know the URL for the first step of the booking tool, Chris, by any chance? The URL for it?
The URL should be the same across the board, so it should be something like, yeah,
Because
that's
I've
right.
just picked. Is that I think Helen thinks that's the third step in the journey for
So
booking an appointment.
yeah, that's right. So it's only the page names that change, I think. So if we jump onto booker.co.uk, just in the browser, just to double check that.
Oh, right, okay.
So I'm pretty sure it's only the page names that change. But
Oh, right. So that's right then.
yeah.
Okay. Cool. I can't move this stupid thing. How do you move the presenting thing?
So the little pin at the top right.
Oh, okay. Cool. Thank you.
No worries.
So, is this right then, how I set it up?
Cool. Yeah, spot on. So you're looking at the 28th to the 27th to the 28th. Cool. And then just looking at visits across the board on each one. Yeah, sweet. So that's just looking at everyone that visited the booking page.
Yeah. So it was on the 27th at 9 o'clock. So 51. So I probably need to do the week before that as well. Is that worth doing?
Yeah, so if we could look at the week prior to the 27th, which should be
The
the 20th.
20th.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So, because one of the reasons why it's always a bit sketchy trying to compare like day to the next day is just because traffic tends to vary quite a lot from day to day, whereas week on week tends to be quite consistent-ish. Cool. So, go on, talk us through what you see.
So from the time of the program, so it seems to have a reasonably significant uplift. So it was 29 bookings the week before, and then up to 51 from 9 o'clock, between 9 and 10. Doesn't seem to change too much after 10 o'clock though. Next day.
Cool. So then it also looks to have continued to peak into the early hours there. So you can see that 16. That's cool. So if you were to...
So yeah, I guess totals were higher as well, weren't they? So it was 711 on the 27th. And compared to the week before, it's higher the day after the program as well. So I guess it's not massively uplift the day after, so it might not be that bad.
One of the other things we could do, we could look at the actual conversion page of that. So if that's just everyone that entered those CVs, the actual funnel, those could be people potentially just looking at prices. What we could do following that is then look at how many of those actually converted. So did they essentially equate to sales?
Okay. How do I do that? Is there a different page for sales?
Correct. Yeah, so I'm just going to send that over in the chat just rather than running through it. Just 1 second. So what you can do, if you were to create a new segment, and then if you bring in page name rather than URL.
Okay.
So yeah, if we go with that one. Cool. So if we were to search for within this step 4, so it's literally just typing in step 4. Sorry, it should be step -4. It's my fault. And no spaces between those. There you go. So if we select that one. So that relates just to where people have seen the conversion page. So you could call that, yeah, HA conversion page.
Okay. Is it right on a shows a hit, or is it visit?
If we look at visit, that way we can kind of cross-reference that with other things as well. So say, for example, we wanted to look at channel, or we wanted to look at anything else around that.
Yeah.
Sweet, so hit save.
Cool.
And that's health assessments, derm, GP, and MSK, isn't it? That's all bookings across CBT.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Yeah. Just saying.
Yeah, nice. Sweet, so if we were to remove our URL path there. Yeah, awesome. There you go. So you can actually see a bit of a surge marginally, so an extra 6 completion. But if we just really want to cement that in, how does that look by hour?
One second. Dun dun dun. 9 o'clock. Oh.
Okay, so it actually happened prior to. See, this is why you always check by hour. So did we actually see anything converting later into the night as we saw previously?
How about them? No, we didn't.
Okay, awesome. So we've actually concluded there that we saw a lot of people that didn't convert. So we saw additional traffic coming into the health assessment page, but they
Which I
didn't
guess is
convert.
what we saw with the BBY data. We just had a lot of people coming in probably to check prices and then didn't convert.
Yeah, sweet. So we could say that that was impacted into the health assessments as well.
Cool.
Awesome. And plus, if they actually came to check pricing as well, then they remain to be leads. So that could be
Yes.
another way of looking at that. So if we were to filter this down to where the page contains step 2,
Yeah.
then we could see how many leads that were driven by that.
Well, should we do that then?
Let's do it.
Do-do-do. Was that the right one?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Cool.
Cool, so that looks like it jumped up massively week on week.
Yeah.
Now, here's hoping this is actually reflecting the hours. There, so we can see
Yeah.
from 7 o'clock, which is kind of interesting. Inconsistent, but interesting.
Yeah, that is weird.
Cool. So yeah, might not necessarily answer the question as to what drove it, but we can see that potentially something at 7 PM on that day had an impact.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Cool. Anyone got anything to add to that they'd want to see around this kind of work?
Would you ever look into the types of people or not?
Potentially, yeah. I mean,
Ages and that kind of thing.
yeah. I mean, one of the ways I'd kind of start off with that is just by mobile device. So once you start going into demographics and things like that, you've got to start trying to think of what's the source of it. So the way that a lot of our factors are calculated on Booper, they're calculated by using when people complete the BBY funnel.
Yeah.
So within that, you could then start to calculate age and things like that and gender and pull that apart and try and say, okay, we've seen an increase within this or this. But given that these samples are going to be quite small, as soon as you start cutting it down even further to those levels, you're going to end up seeing quite erratic results between the two, because it could just be that 2 more people entered male in that form than entered female within that form, and it could essentially be a bit of a red herring almost. But I do think that, yeah, mobile device definitely. So start as broad as you can do, and then start to split it down further.
So we could do leads. Maybe just look at the day.
I don't know how much of a challenge that is. Yes, I agree.
Is there any, you know, when you're building to the side,
Yeah.
you know, the visits has gone all the way across. Is that an issue or not? I guess
No,
it's for mobile.
It's not a problem. The only reason why it'll start throwing invalid though is because you're saying visits twice.
Yeah, how do I get it to shift back?
So if you just click out, it's just essentially because it'll always stack across the higher up you go. So always try to go underneath of where you're looking at.
Okay. I might start a bit again then.
Well, that's what we think anyway.
Cool. If you want to, rather than using that as segments, because we know that there's only going to be desktop, mobile, and tablet, you
Yeah.
could just also just type in device type and then just add that into the left-hand side underneath BBUI step 2.
Ah,
So
that'd
rather
be
than having
easier.
3 separate columns, it'll just
Been
pull
doing
it
it
out.
the long way around all
There you
this time.
go. So
Um,
it's mobile device type, I think.
this one.
So we
So,
drop that. There you go. Sweet. One thing to realise as well is that desktop pulls through as other in this instance.
okay.
It would just be a JavaScript mapping, but that's essentially how the two map together.
That's the problem.
Cool. And again, I'd approach that in the same way of looking week on week. Have we seen any kind of shift in the overall mix of traffic? Because particularly within like TV and things like that, we'd expect it to be shifting more towards mobile devices because obviously sat watching TV, you wouldn't necessarily expect a large population to be on their laptops or computers.
Yeah. So with this, so if you wanted to add hours as well, so look at
Yeah.
the split, can you still do that within? Can you add that to the left-hand side still, or
You
what would you
can
need
do,
to do?
yeah. So potentially, if you wanted to do that, I would go back to the way you were doing it previously. So
Oh, right,
in that
okay, yeah.
segments at the top, just so
Yeah.
that way, because otherwise you'll end up with mobile phone all the hours of the day, other all the hours of the day, tablet all the hours of the day.
Yeah.
However, with the way that we were doing it previously, you just have that one output and you can compare them columns.
Okay. Cool. Adobe's freaking out.
It's cool. If it's doing something like this, just do a hard refresh. So just hit refresh on the page. And there you go. So all the segments and things like that are usually saved. So it's just a case of dragging those into place.
Okay.
Yeah, because actually that's something that Tom was going to share. And actually, I think that's one of the things.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So you can see on the percentage signs on the right hand side,
Yeah.
there was a slight shift towards tablet devices and 0.1 shift towards mobile.
Yeah. So not massive, is it
Not
really?
huge, no.
Okay.
Cool.
I'll tell you why it's not different. I was going to put leads in, wasn't I? So would that go to the left or on top?
I'd put it in the, just on top.
On top, yeah.
Or alternatively, because you're applying it to both, you could
Yeah.
apply it where it says add segment at the top there. So,
Yeah. Cool.
So it's one of those where, say for example, you wanted to filter this just to mobile and you wanted to keep your data table exactly like it is. That's where I'd use things like that.
Yeah. So this looks better now because there's a bigger
that's really
shift
cool.
for mobile.
Yeah,
Which makes
shift-
sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's mobile and tablet.
Yeah.
That's wicked. Really cool.
Brill.
Cool. Has anyone got anything else they want to add to that or digging any further with it? Cool. I think we'll leave it there then, if everyone's okay with that and no one's got any other business to bring up.
Sorry, Chris, can I just ask, are we recording this?
We are indeed, yeah. I'll make sure it's
Oh, right, okay.
I'm going to have to
Because I
try
only joined part way through, so I
That's all right.
didn't see the beginning of that.
That's right. I'd have to try and hash them both together and make them available, but yeah, should be fine.
All right, okay, cool. Thank you.
No worries. Okay, thanks very much for attending, everybody.
Thanks, Chris.
No
Thanks,
worries.
guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And thanks for taking us through
Bye.
that, Jen. Brilliant.
No worries. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.